Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Frank Gore Jr., Southern Miss Golden Eagles, and you listen to FunBelt Podcast, Southern Miss to the top.
If you didn't know before, now you know why they call this the FunBelt.
Very excited about the Sun Belt.
You know, while other conferences have been breaking up, our conference has become stronger.
The state of Sunbelt football is the strongest in our history.
I saw FunBelt Conference, and I'm like, I don't know what this is. I got to join the show. It sounds a lot of fun.
Well, first of all, I mean, it was just a great event. I mean, it's first class. I mean, you can tell the Sun Belt Conference is just a great conference, and the commissioner to, the other coaches. And I have a relationship with really most all the other coaches in the league, just from my years in college athletics. And also just so many of those coaches recruited our program so hard, when I was there at Jones College. So I've already got a really strong, relationship there. And so, I think for sure, it was an opportunity, just good camaraderie, but also, we learned a lot as far as just, for the conference moving forward. But a great experience, great people, and just an opportunity to kind of, like you say, get my feet wet a little bit from a standpoint of, getting used to the conference and the different coaches and administration there in the conference.
So there we hear from ULM new women's head coach, Misty Bilderback, talking about her time in Destin as she got indoctrinated to Sunbelt Conference. What do they call? I guess coaches meetings, off-season meetings, whatever we want to call them. She got to go to Florida. We didn't.
No, we didn't get to go. We weren't invited.
We were not invited.
But
welcome in Dusty Thibodeaux, Warhawk Report, Jeremy Harper from Howraiser, the funny guy, and Shane Mettlen from the Daily News Record. Guys, it's off season, so we're going every other week. How have things been here?
You know what?
Good.
Let me. I don't know if it's the same thing in the newspaper business, Mettlen. Like, I know you're a serious reporter, and serious reporters always covering serious stories. But in my little neck of the woods, where the amateurs play, what we call this time of year? It's at the time of this recording, it's May 31st, right? Tomorrow is June 1st. You know what that means? June 1st, or June content. Do you know what June content is?
I believe we talked about this last June. Guess I've been on for a year.
June content is when you kind of come up with dumb ass storylines. Like, if your Sunbelt coach is a pizza topping, what would it be? And then you'd write a whole story about that. That's where we are right now. Mettlen, surely the Daily News Record, which has won so many Pulitzers, so many prizes internationally and nationally. Surely you guys don't descend into June content.
You know what? There's a lot of local summer baseball that kind of takes over the June content once that happens around here. It gets a little hairy, but it's not too bad.
It's desperate. I've already, even before June, I've already published a story about asteroids hitting every single Sunbelt city. I've got a head start on June content. In fact, I think I kind of blew my shot here. I don't know if I have any June content left for June. Tibbs, can you give me storylines?
Way to be an overachiever there, Jeremy. We're so proud of you that you color inside the lines. We give you the gold star. We honor thee with a trip to New Orleans in actually in just about a month, or 2 months. Excuse me.
It's 2 months to the
2 months into July.
Sunbelt days.
I'm looking forward already to June.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to that too. But you know what? You asked what we're doing. I think what we're doing is the three of us, all being citizens from teams not included into the festivities. I think the three of us are watching from the far, watching NCAA baseball unfold.
I'm okay with that. I mean, it's my favorite time of the year is the regionals, where you get to see the fours, You get to see some teams kind of squeak out some wins. You get to see some sweat as that 4 seed plays the number 1 seed and has that early lead, only to watch it be blown away later on. I did see, speaking of which, Jeremy, we got to pull our money, our $2.
Sure.
We need the parlay of George Mason and Florida A&M in the national title game. That pays $500K to 1, baby.
Oh man, you know how many interns we could afford if we had that kind of cash?
We're not getting an intern. We're definitely going to New Orleans and probably not producing the first second of content from there, or at least not one that we could share.
Okay, so I'm watching the baseball unfold. Here's what we got, Tibbs. All right, so we've got Coastal Carolina. At the beginning of the season, a little bit unexpected. I think everybody kind of predicted maybe a rebuilding year for Coastal, right? Tibbs, I think you were. In fact, I think you were big on that rebuild bandwagon for Coastal. Am I correct on that? Did I imagine that?
No, I did. I mean, I didn't think they were going to be like god awful, like, oh my God, where'd this team come from? But I didn't think that they were going to be conference regular season champs and number 8 in the nation getting ready to host a regional.
I'll do you one better, Tibbs. I got to the point where I was thinking to myself, maybe Coastal was a one-hit wonder when it came to baseball. Maybe, that they were just sort of a perfect storm that year before they hit the Sun Belt, winning the national championship. Then they come over to the Sun Belt, and they're not going to win us any national champions. But man, they look great this year. Also looking great, and also kind of picked for their strength in baseball. Southern Miss, they're in the tournament. Now, should one of those teams have been hosting a regional? Shade, tell me, should we be pissed off about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Coastal was probably deserving of a regional. Been highly ranked pretty much, I wouldn't say all season, because, early in Sun Belt play, I don't think anybody was quite expecting this from them, but they've been a ranked top 15-ish team for quite a while. It seems like a regional host to me.
I've seen them ranked in the top 10 in some polls. Baseball
which they are. You confused me for a second. I thought they were a regional host, and they are. So, what are we talking about here? Host? Yeah, I thought they were, and then you convinced me they weren't. But I double checked; they are a regional host.
All right. Now, this is a problem when you support a baseball team that hasn't sniffed any postseason action in 3 of the last 4 years, and is looking probably not to fire its coach after 16 horrible seasons. Probably going to have the same goddamn coach. I'm not bitter about this. I'm just going to let
we can tell.
But yes, I probably should have done my homework a little bit better on that. But all right, well, let's talk about the 2 other teams that are coming in. From what I understand, part of the last 4 in, which is kind of incredible, 2 Sun Belt teams, part of the last 4 in, according to the powers that be, and that being Louisiana, a perennial Sun Belt powerhouse, who, as we were told by Louisiana themselves, that their pitching just wasn't very good this year. And Troy, the team that Tibbs said was the dark horse contender, the one team that could really do some magic in the postseason. Tibbs nailed it spot on. Troy is in there too. What do you guys think about the field? A 4-bid league? Did we get everybody that we needed to get in?
I think so. I think that was very deserving. I think early on when we saw Troy get 2 of 3 from Central Florida in Orlando, I think that really set the pace for how the season was going to go for them. From there, they went 2 of 3 also against the Cajuns in Lafayette, not the easiest place to get the wins. And then 2 of 3 against Texas State, including a 22-5 blowout. Troy was very deserving. They have the talent. They have the skills. I don't know what they really have to how much noise they're going to make in this regional. I do think they can get past Boston College on their Friday afternoon game. but that Alabama team is going to be tough. Going to be tough at home.
Yeah.
And then you have a really good Sanford team that's in that mix as well, I do believe.
Yeah, I think just kind of glancing at the matchups, I didn't see any impossible matchups, like really super hard matchups. But can we? All right, you guys don't have to agree, although I think you will. Would you agree that last year's performance of the Sun Belts from the Sun Belt was a little disappointing, was a bit of a letdown?
I think to some degree. I think, wins. I'm counting Southern Miss, even though they weren't a Sun Belt last year, but they get to host a super regional. You kind of think that they're going to be riding a trip to Omaha into the Sun Belt, and then they don't get it done at home. Georgia Southern hosting regional doesn't get it done at home. I mean, they did. There was a lot of teams that had the opportunity and were playing at home who just didn't really take advantage of having that home field advantage.
Absolutely, Shane. It was like a lot of, this is the year of the Sun Belt. We may not win the whole thing, but we're going to go far. And then we didn't. But this year, I think we have fewer teams this year in, but we're still among a very small handful of conferences with 4 or more teams in the tournament. And I think that just is remarkable for the Sun Belt. And that the Warhawks and Arkansas State and JMU, aren't sniffing any of that right now. Just makes me, I don't know what it makes for you guys, but makes me hungry for a competitive baseball team. It makes me yearn. It makes me beg to see something on the diamond from the Red Wolves. And I'm sure you yearn, Tibbs, you pine for something from the Warhawks. And I can't say that you pine for better performance from the Dukes, because the Dukes did pretty well this year, considering that they were not picked to do very well. You must be feeling fairly good about the Dukes.
Yeah, I mean, JMU baseball is in a weird place, kind of, where they're not living up probably to the standards set by some of the other teams on campus, but they seem to be trending in kind of the right direction. But when you talk about Arkansas State hanging on to a coach for, what was it? What'd you say, 14 years?
I think if we may hold on to him, it'll be like 17 years. 17
Yeah.
years.
I believe this is like Eichenberry's 8th season at JMU. And every time his contract gets renewed or rolled over, like there's some grumbling about that because they haven't been to the NCAA tournament. They haven't won a conference championship. But they seem to be going in the right direction. They had some, do the COVID years really count against you? Like when things were so weird in baseball in spring and you stop in the middle of one season and you're canceling games the next season. And
stupid season.
I feel like they're probably heading in the right direction, even if, a lot of JMU fans would say, hey, no NCAA tournaments is not acceptable. I mean, I think he probably earned some more time.
Yeah, the situation at Arkansas State is actually even more dire. No conference championships, no even sniffs. It's been since the 90s since Arkansas State was invited to the NCAA tournament. We've had losing seasons, I think, at least 3 of the last 4 seasons, maybe beyond that. I got to look back on that. The head coach is a guy named Tommy Raffo, really nice guy, great guy. And there's 2 camps when we talk about Tommy Raffo. One, this is Raffo's fault. He's been there for a long time. He can't build a program. He can't find the pitching. He can't find the hitting. He can't recruit. He can't coach. He's a nice guy. We got to let him go. And then the other camp is, well, we put all of our money into football and basketball, and God help Tommy Raffo, he just does not have the resources to get the job done. If we fire Raffo, who are we going to get to take such a shit job? Is kind of what the thoughts are. And I kind of want to hear what the thoughts are for the Warhawks. Like the Warhawks, I don't know. I can't remember the last time that ULM has been a threat in baseball.
2012.
Take it into that tip.
2012, almost a decade ago, when they won the Sun Belt Conference tournament.
Yeah.
I believe they were maybe runner-up in the regular season that year. They might have won the regular season. Went to the NCAA regional, lost to LSU 3-1.
Yeah.
Beat Belmont.
Okay.
Lost to LSU. And that was a wrap.
Wow, you had this
that was
queued up.
I was just there. The expectations, I think you have to kind of baby step it first, right? I mean, we got to get out of the cellar. We got to move up the standings and be competitive in the Sun Belt. I don't want to sit here and say, oh, well, we have to make it to Omaha. We have to make it to a super regional. I think you just got to make it to Montgomery first. You haven't done that now twice in the past 5 years to advance into the postseason tournament. Baby steps. Make it to the Gump and see what happens there. And preferably not on the first day, so you're not having to have that stress of the one and done. You're at least in the double elimination. So maybe you're there for 2 days. But I think that's the first step that you got to do before you can really say, hey, we're going to be contenders and not pretenders.
I think the shame about this, Tibbs, for ULM and for Arkansas State is that we've had several years where the Sun Belt was always sort of a good baseball conference, but not like a world on fire conference. We get maybe two teams in, we count ourselves lucky. Suddenly, the Sun Belt is a legit powerhouse in baseball. There's no even question about it. You can't even wink and nod and go, sure, little buddy. It's true. And ULM and Arkansas State aren't, I can't speak for ULM and I won't, but I'm just guessing that they're just not in position right now to take advantage of this meteor to ride into. Even JMU coming in, fresh from, the FCS, coming into this baseball environment, immediately took advantage, immediately ingrained themselves into the fabric of competitive baseball. And the Red Wolves and the Warhawks continue to flounder in this space, and it is so frustrating. But we're not here to bitch and complain about the losers. We're really here to talk about who's going to win the whole damn thing, right? Of the four guys, I want you guys to pick who's going to go the furthest.
First of all, I misspoke when I said the road out of Tuscaloosa was Sanford. That was a projected regional. It's actually somebody from the boot. The Southland Conference champion Nicholls State is the 4 seed in Tuscaloosa. Doesn't matter. I don't think that the Sun Belt is going to be relevant in Tuscaloosa. I think the 2 teams that you're going to see advance to a super regional, Southern Miss, Coastal Carolina.
Because they're the 2 strongest teams.
For sure. And the deepest pitching.
Yeah, because Louisiana doesn't have the pitching. Now, does Troy have pitching?
They have the bats. They can outscore you. It doesn't matter about the pitching.
Okay, well, that's what the Cajuns would say that. What about you, Shane? Who is going to go the furthest?
I mean, I got to say Coastal. I mean, just because they've been the best team. They've got the best road playing a regional at home. I mean, Southern Miss, though, they came out of that 2 seed situation, winning a regional on the road last year. So, you can do it. They know they've got a lot to play for, sending their coach off in style. I mean, they would love to keep that season going for a few more weeks and, extend his career a little bit longer.
That's a great storyline, but also Coastal Carolina's coach says, hey, I'm Gary Gilmore. I've been coaching a long time too, and I'm quitting next year. Why do you think he makes that announcement this time? Is it a bit of hey, we got to wrap this up one more time for the Gipper? I don't know how things are going to go next year, but this year, you guys need to get behind me and get me into that championship game. Is there a little bit of, you think there's a little bit of head games going on with Gary Gilmore?
I don't know. I don't know him well enough to to comment on it, really. I mean, maybe he was tired of getting asked when he was going to retire and he just wanted to put it out there. I don't know. But
that
it's
is
the
funny.
Old, it's the old Roy Williams retire suddenly or Coach K, I want my farewell tour type of deal, isn't it? Like how you decide to do it.
That does always crack me up, announcing you're retiring, not this season, which is already still going on, but next season. So I can kind of like get my accolades as I go from town to town. I like the guys that just kind of retire, like the basketball player. He played for the Knicks for a while, Carmelo Anthony. He just retired. No farewell tour, no even big announcement during the last game of the season. Just said, yep, hanging it up. But I have to agree. I'm putting my money on the Chants this year. I really think they're a legit good team. Southern Miss started off kind of rocky. It seemed like it took them some time for their pitching to get together. It is now, but who knows what happens in the heat of battle. Coastal Carolina, even though it was a few years ago, they've been there. They know the heat of that tournament. They felt it. They've given it. And now they're back, and Gilmore certainly knows what it takes to advance his team. But I tell you what, Tibbs, you got me believing in Troy, man. You mentioned Troy a few weeks ago, and ever since then, it seems like Troy has been some level of unstoppable. So if Coastal is my first pick, Troy is my dark horse.
In addition to baseball going on, we had softball. We have not got to speak since that happened. The Raging Cajuns able to escape the red stick and head west to Washington, where they were swept 2-0. Still made it to a super regional, though. I think the bigger miss out of that, though, was that the Cajuns could have played in-state, McNeese State, if McNeese hadn't have just absolutely shit the bed in the 6th and 7th inning. They would have won that regional over Washington and traveled to Lafayette for a I-10 battle.
And something that was probably of great interest to you because you love those smaller Louisiana schools. Your fingers are on the pulse of that. You say it to LSU, like any game against LSU, you're like, you say, give me Nicholls State, give me McNeese, give me all these little schools with a fight in them. That's what you like, Tibbs.
Yeah, I think I'm jealous that we don't have a Buffalo school like Harding.
Harding's the best. I love Harding. But all right. So I saw that Liberty had a big upset win. That was like news. Who they beat? It was like North Carolina, maybe. I forget. It was like a top tier team. It was like, oh my God, how Liberty do it? I'm like, well, it's because Group of 5 and smaller schools, they're catching up with you, brother, when it comes to softball and baseball. And you get a team like the Cajuns who are just legit good. We're going to see some legacy time when it comes to SunBelt and softball. I'm very excited about that.
My question to you, though, Shane, was Marshall robbed that they made it all the way to the finals and lost to the Cajuns just 1-0? Were they robbed of not getting into the regionals?
I think probably. I mean, if you kind of go by the history of the Sun Belt softball, I think you kind of got to give the benefit of the doubt to a team that had that good of a regular season. And like you said, made it to the finals against a really good Louisiana team. If they had a chance to play them in the regular season, they probably get one of those, a quality win, maybe not take the series, but they probably get at least a good win out of it. And, it's tough luck for Marshall, as good as the seasons they had, like historic kind of season for Marshall softball.
All the talk about the Diamonds, it's still football season. It's always football season, guys.
Always football season.
The Sun Belt Conference released the bowl slate. New Orleans Bowl will kick off the Sun Belt Conference slate with that game in the Louisiana Superdome, December 16th. It's an actual afternoon game, Jeremy, 1:00.
Wow. That is
Yeah.
crazy. It's so unlike the New Orleans Bowl of late, because I remember going to the New Orleans Bowl and it would start like at 8 o'clock at night on a Sunday. So this is wild. This is something new.
Sunbelt still with just 5 guaranteed bowl games. Obviously, the R&L Carriers New Orleans Bowl, the Cure Bowl, Myrtle Beach, Camellia, and the 68 Ventures Bowl, which I had no idea what that is. That is the Mobile Bowl, GoDaddy
the
Bowl,
old GoDaddy Bowl, Lenders Tree Bowl. Yeah, okay, I got it. They got
Dollar
new
General,
stuff.
all the above.
And
Still the contingency agreements are still in place with ESPN Events, which is that random bowl game of if it's needed, it's in Frisco, Texas, and your favorite, Jeremy, the Independence Bowl.
I love the Independence Bowl. But look, is the New Orleans Bowl still the top Sun Belt team supposed to go to that? Like the guys that win the Sun Belt, that's their designated bowl. Is that still true?
That is not true. It is all slotting.
Okay. All right. So did they change that this year, or is that they changed that for a while? Because it used to be if you won the Sun Belt,
You went to New Orleans.
Bowl, yes. Now, if you were, somebody took you to a more prestigious bowl, then somebody else would fill in that slot. But the New Orleans Bowl was more or less the Sun Belt Bowl. So it's no longer the Sun Belt Bowl.
It's been at least the past 3-4 years. It has not been the champion that's gone. I mean, it could have been the champion to go, but it's also because it was the better matchup.
I gotcha. Okay. So all right. That's good. That's good. Did anything else come out of that news that we need to be talking about?
It all gets started on Thursday night, August 31st.
Mm-hmm.
Rhode Island headed to the ATL to kick off Sun Belt Conference action.
They're taking on the Panthers?
They are taking on the Panthers.
The Panthers get the first Sun Belt game of the year.
That is correct.
That's pretty good. Yeah. Good for the Panthers.
The second game is Arkansas State going to the dyslexic OU when it's the University of Oklahoma.
We get the first Sun Belt game of the Saturday, right? That's a Saturday game, right? That's not some goofy Friday game.
Bright and early, 11 a.m. on ESPN.
Yeah, we're very excited about that. The last time Arkansas State played OU was in the year 2000, got crushed, predictably enough. That Red Wolves team, which was actually an Indians team at that time, lost 11 games. The last game of the year, they played North Texas and won. So that was where they got their one victory. So my brother and I, Rex Steele, were commiserating about that 2000 season. Man, if you were a fan of the Dark Age Indians, you deserve free meals at Olive Garden for the rest of your life. That was a tough road to hoe. But yeah, we're looking forward to that Oklahoma game. It's going to be cool. It's going to be great. I'm glad to hear that the Panthers got that first game. The Panthers need that. It should get that kind of publicity. Big city school, up and coming team. Who they got? They got Rhode Island. That's kind of not a great matchup. I wish we could have had a better matchup to start off the Sun Belt, but what can we say?
But you know what? We talk about how Georgia State tends to not kick it into gear at the start of the season. So maybe being first and all alone starting out on a Thursday night against a team that they should handle, maybe that jump starts them a little bit early, and we're not saying, hey, why is this Georgia State team winning in October when they sucked it up in September?
That would be highly unusual, Shane. And also, what if they just do true to form and just lay a huge turn for Rhode Island?
that would not be a good start to the season. But when you got all eyes on you, maybe that's what they need to start us off.
That would be so Panthers to do that, to be like, Rhode Island, you're not really known for your football, but we're going to give you a win right there. First game of the season in Atlanta. That's an old Turner Field. Don't call it Turner Field. They get mad when you call it that. But I call it that anyway because I cannot remember what they call it now.
3 interesting games to kick off the season. Actually, the nightcaps. Old Dominion makes the return trip to Virginia Tech. Remember, the Monarchs came into the league last year swinging and beat the Hokies.
Yeah, that was a great game.
South Alabama heads to the Big Easy to play your G5 darlings Tulane.
Man, we gotta beat that. We gotta beat the Wave. Go South Alabama. I can't stand the Green Wave right now.
And then to close it out, midnight football for all of us in America, except for those on the West Coast. Your Shants are headed to the scene of the crime of the UCLA game last year to play the Bruins.
Haven't the Bruins learned their lesson? I guess not. You don't invite a Sun Belt team onto your turf and expect to walk away clean. Woof. Man, what a long trip for the Chanticleers. What a tough start for the new head coach out there. That's going to be a rough game to play. But I guess, again, all eyeballs. Everybody was going to be worn out and tired. They're going to click on their TVs, see that the Chants are playing UCLA at 11 o'clock at night or something crazy. And we're going to be watching. We'll find another gear and end up at least getting that first half, right?
Shane, as the countdown clock already started for Bucknell coming to Harrisonburg?
JMU fans might be overlooking that one a little bit. I mean, it'll be fun home opener, but they're looking forward to the next week where they invade Charlottesville 45 minutes down the road and go to Virginia.
Yeah, that'll be a good game. But yeah, I tell you what, there is nothing worse than tanking against your FCS opponent in week one.
Yeah.
So don't look back past Bucknell. Yeah. I don't know anything about Bucknell and their football program, and that might be what makes them dangerous, Shane. You better look out.
As much as I like those opening weekend games, and Shane mentioned it, week 2, James Madison at Virginia, a couple other week 2 games that I'm very interested to see. UAB headed to Georgia Southern.
Yeah,
the Cajuns and Old Dominion already kick off Sun Belt Conference action in week 2. But the one that I have circled the most, there's actually 3 games that I have circled.
Okay.
Jacksonville State goes to Coastal, the Conference USA, and they just recently landed 4-star Nebraska transfer at quarterback. I cannot think of his name off the top of my head. That's not your normal Jack State that is in Conference USA. And then Marshall goes to ECU, Texas State to UTSA. That is the weekend of early football.
Texas State UTSA is going to be a fun game. I think too we're really going. You mentioned Jackson State, but I think the two, and the reason why that I was thinking of Coach Deion Sanders, the 2 programs that have taken the most FCS students this year has been Colorado and Texas State, which makes sense because both programs have taken their coaches from the FCS ranks and they're taking people from their own. I am fascinated with incarnate Bobcats. What we call them? The incar cats? What incarnate Bob? We had a word for them. For the incarnate word cats. That's what was the incarnate word. The word cats. That's who they are. I am fascinated to see if this transition works. I think we talked a little bit about last week how when you get a bunch of FCS guys from the same team, it's actually a really good mix because there's a bunch of guys who have played together and know the system. Maybe they don't have that speed and size that most teams you have, but what they have is a game plan and cohesiveness. I would like to see what the Word Cats do this year, and UTSA will be a great time to see, or a great opponent to see what they have.
So with that said, we bring in our guest, Tom Burnett, former Sun Belt Conference Associate Commissioner and also the former Commissioner of the Southland Conference. He took over for Greg Sankey, who left the Southland for the SEC.
Oh, so he could have an opening. That's much.
Whatever happened to that guy?
So Shane, one of the big things that we always try to do on the podcast is really remember the roots of how the Sun Belt got to be in this state of being the premier G5 league. And one of the guys that we have on today, Shane, we still can't get Wright Waters because I think you scared him off there, Shane. But we have the associate commissioner at the time that the Sun Belt joined the ranks of having FBS football. Tom Burnett joins us. Tom, welcome in.
Great, Dusty. Great to be with you and Shane and talk about maybe the good old days of Sun Belt football.
So I was there at that first Sun Belt conference game, ULM hosting Middle Tennessee. And I remember looking at Wright Waters going, well, Commish, what do you think? And I think his exact words right before he walked out onto the field was, man, I hope this sticks. Was there really that much pessimism, I guess you could say, going into that 2001 season?
Yeah, I don't know if it was pessimism so much. There was certainly a lot of excitement because, having been in this region, having worked with a lot of these schools for a long time, even going back to the Sun Belt's predecessor, the American South Conference, these were kind of these ships at sea. These football programs didn't really have a home. Some were independent, some were in the Big West Conference. And obviously, almost all of them came from 1AA with maybe an exception or two. So they were still trying to find their way in 1A at the time. So there was just a lot of, I don't know if it was confusion so much, but they needed someone to really get their arms around these programs, bring them together, sell them a story that, this could work. It's going to take a while, but this could work. But it can't work if you're going to stay independent, if you're going to stay in a far-flung geographic conference. There was a real opportunity there. And, I think the phrasing that I remember Wright talking about in the office with our staff was, be careful what we wish for, because we just got it. And that was a 1A, now FBS football conference that, led to a whole lot of other issues that I'm sure we'll talk about as well. But it was a crazy time, but a good time looking back.
When you looked around, obviously the Sun Belt was established, really known kind of back then more as a basketball conference. Was the membership there really approached at the time, like Louisiana Tech and those other schools, about joining in football, or was there already a plan in place to know that you were going after the Idahos, the New Mexico States, the Louisiana schools, and so forth?
Well, I think there was a focus on those core Sun Belt schools at the time, which included Louisiana Tech, that that there was going to be some action taken perhaps on setting up a football conference. I think it was more than just getting the conference together. Remember, there was no bowl game, there was no television agreement. There was we were barely into the internet, I guess, but there wasn't any streaming capability like we see today on ESPN Plus. So none of that existed. So a lot of those pieces had to come together. But I remember the core group, the Latex, at the time USL, this was before South Alabama had a football program, before Western Kentucky had a football program. And I think there was a focus initially on that core group of Sun Belt schools, but then an acknowledgement that we would need to bring programs in. And that's where you had conversations with North Texas and Middle Tennessee, who came in as full members. This was well before even Western Kentucky added football. So there was a lot of focus, and Louisiana Tech and Boise State and some other schools were in these initial meetings that we had. But obviously, those were a couple of the schools that took the WAC option when it expanded, and some things changed there. And that probably brought more of those other independents in, the New Mexico States, the UL Monroe, all of that kind of came together at that time.
Having, recently covered a team that made that transition to FBS, and worth it? Is it worth the investment? Is this what we should be doing? In James Madison's case, it clearly was, but to kind of start a league that's almost all going through that process, what was the kind of reaction like at that time to all these programs kind of making a huge jump?
Yeah, that's a great question, Shane. And I think what we're seeing with JMU currently, who went from very much the top of FCS into obviously a very prominent position already in the bowl subdivision, that was very different back in 2001. You had some programs that honestly might have had some success at the FCS level, as we call it now, but they had not established themselves at all. And that was troubling because it wasn't just one or two, it was a group of them. And if people can remember, Dusty may recall this, having followed the league from its beginning as a football entity, but our first champion had a losing overall record. North Texas was, I think, maybe 5-6. And we had to get a special waiver from the NCAA to allow them to go to the bowl game because they were a conference champion. But, that was an indication that these programs weren't there yet. They needed time to mature and grow. Whereas my observation, and I'm very involved still with the FCS championship game here in Frisco, Texas, is that James Madison came from a very different position that they're in now, obviously. No question, competitively successful, but have built a program with a great university to make this work. And we've already seen that in year one of their transition to FBS.
What was the reception from like the university presidents? Because I mean, at the end of the day, them and the athletic directors are really the ones that kind of give the thumbs up, thumbs down. Was this well received when you talked about that initial league ranging from Arkansas State, Idaho, New Mexico State? I mean, the travel wasn't easy for anybody.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Understanding that football travel can be, even if it's far flung, so to speak, can be a bit more managed than if you're talking about other sports and, double round robin schedules and that type of thing. I think the presidents and the athletic directors, maybe it was a point of exhaustion where they had tried everything else. And there was always talk about a more regional conference setup and how do we get at that. And that's where, again, when Wright Waters came on board in late 98, I believe it was, he was charged with putting that together. So while 01 was the first season, we were working on this, the moment Wright walked in the door, late 98, early 99, and putting that together. And that obviously included not only getting the schools together to form a league, but to also try to find a postseason opportunity and any kind of television at that time.
Was it all difficult to kind of keep everybody on board early on, knowing like those challenges you were facing and like keep everybody looking ahead to like what the league could become if you gave it some time?
Yeah, another great question. I would say the clincher, so to speak, on keeping those teams together moving forward was really the creation of the New Orleans Bowl, which again was Wright Waters and some folks in New Orleans, the Greater New Orleans Sports Foundation, that put that together at the Superdome. That was a key in all of this, was that there was some trepidation about forming the conference. It was that the champion had to have a bowl opportunity. And it was the New Orleans Bowl, as modest a startup as it could be. And there were like 2 or 3 of us that, were working off the back of napkins and, anything we could write notes down on, and trying to form committees and such to put that event together and find a TV window for it. That I think is the glue that held the league together early on. Although now with hindsight looking back, I think those schools were going to be committed to each other. I don't know that they had any other, real options perhaps that we saw later on in the series of realignment phases that we've gone through.
Was there ever a point where kind of to Shane's point there, that it was like, all right, this isn't work, we got to pull the plug?
No, I don't ever recall that. Now, understand, I was there for the first 2 seasons of Sunbelt football. Then I became the Southland Conference commissioner here in the Dallas area. So I kind of stepped away from all of that. But I don't ever recall a moment where, this isn't working. Again, we weren't quite to, the widespread realignment that we later saw with Conference USA and other leagues as well. But I don't recall that. I think, once some schools made their decision to go to the WAC, and that kind of clarified things for the Sun Belt and said, okay, here's our group, here's our family. We're going to embrace them and we're going to move forward. And, that included some struggles early on competitively and just growing their programs. But now, as we've seen, facilities have dramatically changed. Coaching hires are very different than they were in the early 2000s. And obviously people have seen the value of, being a part of the CFP contract and the revenue distribution that comes from that at that level, even for the Sun Belt. So I think overall, whether you looked at it short term or long term, these were very good decisions for these programs.
You mentioned leaving the Sun Belt for the Southland. You really helped build that league into kind of the SEC of the FCS. When you look at that, which do you feel was kind of your bigger accomplishment, that you were able to plant the seed for an FBS football conference, or that you built kind of from the ground up? I wouldn't say the ground up, because Southland's always been a pretty good premier league, but really established the Southland as being that premier FCS league. Sorry,
well, I appreciate those thoughts. Some might argue the SEC tagline there. I appreciate that. And of course, my predecessor in this job, it was Greg Sankey, who's now the SEC commissioner. So, the challenge at the Southland was a very good conference. And in fact, I'll tie this into that first season of Sunbelt football. If you were to go back and look, our Sunbelt teams lost a few games to the Southland. And I understood that because I lived in the region. I understood how good the Southland was. But I can tell you, Commissioner Waters had a big problem with that, and really kind of made that bulletin board material, but when you play McNeese and you play Stephen F. Austin and Northwestern State, you better come ready, because they're maximizing what they can get out of 63 scholarships, and they play a very good brand of football. So, very proud of what we were able to do at the Southland. We made some advancements in basketball as well, but the football's always been strong. And, now that league is 60 years old. So it's now moving into its 7th decade since its founding back in the early 60s. So a great league, and I was proud to be a part of it. But no question, the work I did at the Sun Belt, and part of that was the football, because I had to speak, that language when I went to interview for the Southland job. Was very important for me, and I very much value my time at the Sun Belt and that initial period where I helped with the startup of football.
And as when you were commissioner there of the Southland, what were those conversations like? Because surely there were conferences or even teams trying to do exits. They want to always be at that 1A or FBS level. What were those conversations like with those teams, or as a commissioner, how did you try to keep the Southland together?
Well, it was always a challenge, because I think that, I've often said that no matter what campus you're at, you operate within a bubble, and you could be at the junior college level, you could be at the Power 5 level. You're in a certain bubble where everything inside that bubble, I refer to it as your academics are Ivy League and your athletics are SEC. And we all are guilty of that. And I was guilty of that as a Sunbelt staff member and later the Southland commissioner. But, everyone sees that. So you're always in a conversation about the company you keep. Are we at the best position we can be in, competitively, academically? I would say a lot of school presidents love the association with prominent schools that may be prominent athletically and academically. And there was an association, I thought there was an appeal to be at that highest level of classification in the NCAA, because who doesn't want to be at the highest level? In the Southland, we would argue that, you can go and have a paper designation perhaps, but if you're not competitively successful, if you're not growing your programs, if you're cutting other sports to make something work, then what have you really accomplished long term? But, those are arguments that you would have back and forth. And, we had a number of schools such as Texas State now in the Sun Belt that was a Southland member. Sam Houston State's now going to Conference USA. So, there was always that migration to FBS, and some of that I think you just couldn't avoid. But at times there's others that have looked at it and said, maybe, we're better off where we are. And that's probably an argument that's going to continue forever.
When you look back at your time in the Sun Belt, is there maybe one thing that you would have done differently and kind of see how that played out in the league?
Well, it's probably easy to look back and say, early on, I wish we would have had more bowl opportunities. But you know what? The New Orleans Bowl was, it kind of fell in our lap to a certain degree. And I don't want to underestimate, Wright Waters kind of willed that. Because you're dealing with the Superdome, one of the most famous, facilities in the world, and all of that. You kind of look back. I think our first television deal was a weekly syndicated package through ESPN, but you might have found it on way up the channel in some of the local markets, some of the over-the-air television, things like that. So. I think you can look back and regret. But the reality was this was going to take some time. We weren't going to have instant success. Although I will say in that second year before I left the Sun Belt, North Texas beat Cincinnati in that second New Orleans Bowl. So that was a nice breakthrough and just kind of gave us confidence that we were on the right track and all of that. So I don't know that there were any regrets as such. It was an interesting time. And I think that, I don't know that you could do that in this day and age. I think things have changed to the degree that trying to start up a league like that, I don't want to say it's impossible, but it's going to be very hard to do.
Tom, can't thank you enough for going down memory lane there with us as we talked Southland, Sun Belt, and everything in between. Always love learning the history of the league and appreciate your time. Yeah, you bet, Dusty. Great to be with you and Shane, and happy to help wherever I can. Thanks, guys. So there it is. We always bring back the roots of the Sun Belt, trying to keep the history alive of this great G5 league. It was refreshing, though, to hear him say there was never, at least at a conference level, the idea of this shit ain't working, we got to pull the plug, which was great to hear.
When I was talking to my brother about the 2000 Red Wolf or Arkansas State Indians at the time, that was right when they were joining the Sun Belt, and the news of the Sun Belt creating this football league. And, North Texas was among those being drawn in. And we're both thought to ourselves, this is going to be the worst conference ever assembled. I mean, some of these teams that are being brought in, including us, it's going to be horrible. And look how it's turned out. It's turned out great. It took a little time. It took investment. It took, creativity. But here we are.
Well, even as Tom said, that first year, you have your conference champion that has a losing record. You have to get an NCAA waiver for them to go to the New Orleans Bowl.
I know. It was like we were just kind of goofing around. We didn't know what the hell we were doing. And now look at us. We're top of the world.
It's a pretty incredible story. Like we all can remember it, like that the Sun Belt, the whole Fun Belt thing used to kind of be a joke.
It was a joke.
And but to hear him kind of lay it out, the whole history of it, again, it is like Tib said, it's good to always kind of revisit that and remember the story of how the Sun Belt got to be potentially the best Group of Five conference.
Don't say potentially, Shane.
Shane, it was like when you were just a modest copy boy at the newspaper, at the Daily News Record, fetching coffees, maybe setting some type on the printing press, maybe doing the old obituary beat. And now look at you, Pulitzer Prize winning super reporter Shane Mettlen. That's what the Sun Belt is. It started off in the lowly bowels of the printing room, and now they're the editor of college football.
And on that note, it is definitely time for plugs, promos, and parting shots. Shane, we turn our attention to you, sir.
Well, we talked about June content a little bit earlier. Late May content TV wise, this past 4 days, I've been a little bit busy, but I had to make time for just an unbelievable 4 days of television with finales of Succession, Barry, those two great shows. I don't know if anybody else, either of you guys watched that. Ted Lasso finale. I just finished that. It had to be kind of down my priority list, because also was the season 3 premiere of I Think You Should Leave on Netflix, which is
it good?
My favorite show. Yes, I have watched it over and over and over again. I've got my college roommate texting me about it as we try to do this, and I get distracted by his text. So if anybody hasn't seen it yet, that's my plug, is check out I Think You Should Leave, and then we'll know if we can be friends or not, because it's divisive on whether people like it or not, but we can be friends if you like it.
And I will check it out, and we'll pretend we like it for the sake of this friendship.
Okay. And if you follow me on Twitter too, you'll recognize half the memes I post. There's pretty much from that show.
Okay. Because right now on Twitter, it's every other post is Succession related.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't watched the show. I'm getting ready to start it because of all this, but I am tired of seeing it on Twitter. I will like for that to know. Another show that had its ending was something called Yellow Jackets. Have you watched Yellow Jackets?
I haven't watched that one. I don't think I get Showtime.
It's actually pretty wild. If you ever get a little bit of cannibalism involved, it's awesome. I'm sure Dusty, who lives in Louisiana, or who had lived in Louisiana, probably has his fair and intimate moments with cannibalism.
I was hungry a lot in college. I was never that hungry.
Jeremy Harper of Howlraiser.com quote, "Cannibalism is awesome."
It's tremendous. All right, so plugs, parting shot. Here's it's a sort of a parting plug, and I'm going to hand it to the people of James Madison. You remember, Shane, when you kind of irked the people of Boone? Remember that, when you carelessly irked all those people?
I can't forget, because I talk to you every week.
I like to bring it up because I want you to know that you don't irk the people of Boone. Well, you don't irk the people of Harrisonburg either. So, I wrote that story, that June content that actually came out in May, about asteroids destroying every city in the Sun Belt, right? And for whatever reason, I listed Harrisonburg as Harrisburg. Now, don't you think that would be a common mistake? I mean, Harrisburg is actually easier to say than Harrisonburg. But if you write JMU, which is located in Harrisburg, you get a lot of shit talk for some Harrisonburg guys Who'll say, well, what is that? What is that somewhere in Pennsylvania? I don't know what you're talking about. Where the hell is Harrisburg? I know where Harrisonburg is. I don't know where Harrisburg is. So congratulations to the town folks of Harrisonburg who set me straight. I feel a little bit more educated now about the hamlet that hosts JMU, and I will not make that mistake again. I will not make the mistake that Shane did and continue antagonizing the people of Boone. I will no longer antagonize the people of Harrisonburg. I have learned my lesson.
That's really good.
For the lesson learned, Jeremy and Shane, I know that y'all are true believers. I know that y'all know that they're out there. But finally, NASA is set to host historic UFO hearings. And they're set to unveil the first findings from a study into unidentified craft in our skies and oceans, Jeremy. They're everywhere.
They don't limit
the Pentagon. The Pentagon even admits there's metallic orbs that have been seen all over the world.
Whoa.
This is a new day and age where they finally admit that they are real, and Jeremy is one of them.
You know, I was a huge X-Files fan. I don't know if you guys watched X-Files when it came out. I watched every single season of it, every single episode. One of the reasons why my wife and I are together is because we both like the X-Files, and that kind of brought us together, gave us some common ground that started the glue that has glued our relationship together. I don't know if I've ever really believed in extraterrestrials. I know that I've seen, you know, like this coming from NASA and from the Pentagon. Yes, we're going to reveal all the files. I feel like there's probably some sort of natural or too simplistic answer for all of it. I hope I'm wrong, because as X-Files says, Tibbs, I want to believe, because it would be a lot more exciting to know that we're not alone in this universe. So hopefully, maybe my skepticism will be put to the side for this.
As a Red Wolves fan, Jeremy, all you can do is believe.